Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Get Out of Rap. And it's a first for Get Out of Rap today because my guests are a couple, one of which has been on before, Martin Pemberton, and we developed a bit of a bromance. So this could be awkward, Naomi. I'm sorry.
Is this a threesome?
I'm fully aware.
We've come to a threesome.
I'm fully aware.
But I'm really happy to say we're joined by Naomi Horne. And so Martin and Naomi, a couple, and we're going to be talking about something you're both very passionate about. You spend your life trying to help people on, and that's mental fitness. But firstly, Naomi, welcome.
Hello.
It's great and of course you, Martin, as well.
It's all right. I understand my role now in all this. I am now secondary, mate. It's fine. I'll deal with the jealousy. It's fine.
Yeah. You do. It's good.
Well, I'm just really pleased that we're doing this. And Naomi, you said something before we hit record, which is you feel like you know someone before even kind of meeting them.
Yeah, it's been a strange couple of years, hasn't it? Everyone seems to, you build relationships online, don't you? So actually, we've never met, even on a Zoom. But yeah, I feel like I know you, yeah. And how highly Martin talks about you.
Well, it's reciprocated, it really is. Mine saved me on a recent dog walk. I was feeling pretty low, and by the end of it, was just having a great laugh. It was brilliant.
There you go.
So how are you both?
Yeah, very well.
Yeah, good, thank you.
We're good, mate. Yeah. Thank you.
Really
Let's start with, did you work together before you became a couple, or were you a couple then just started to work together?
The latter. Yeah, we became a couple, and then we kind of started working together, didn't we?
Yeah.
We do suppose similar things in terms of coaching and mentoring and things like that apart, but I think then we naturally just kind of morphed into working together, because I think the combination, male female combination works well as well for relating to, I suppose, more people, from both male and female. Some will identify more with me and kind of listen to what I might say a little bit more, and then there'll be others who will listen to Naomi, probably more listen to Naomi than me, but
I'm gonna say, yeah.
I can do my own little bit, chip in a little bit.
Chipped in. Yeah, I think it's just nice to have a male-female sort of perspective sometimes. Sometimes a female can put a different perspective onto something that a man might say, and vice versa. Yeah. So
that's been really good, actually, because when we've worked with clients, and then we maybe have a little bit of a chat, and then we've been able to give each other maybe that other perspective to kind of then go away and take into the next session, or when we're working with people, to just maybe introduce that idea for them to take on board, that hopefully will help them to see things differently, and then hopefully they can solve any issues that they've got.
Well, in one of the earlier episodes where you were on, Martin, we know about your background. We've been there and done that. You're old news now.
Old news, mate. It's fine.
So Naomi, what's your background then?
My background. So I was a midwife before. I used to be a midwife. 10 years. That's what I did coming out of school. Went to university and trained to be a midwife.
Wow.
Absolutely, I loved it. I was I worked in the middle of Birmingham, so I got a lot of experience with lots of different people. Found myself in some like hairy situations sometimes, but it's all good. Absolutely loved that. And it wasn't until I had my own babies that it was a bit tricky to deliver other people's babies and look after my own at the same time with shift work and stuff. So I stopped that, and I started up my own childminding business. So I seem to have gone from like birth to then children. I grew up working with kids.
It obviously helped with Martin.
That's it. Onto the elderly. Oh no. I'll get to those in a minute. I mean children. And yeah, so I did that for a while. But during that time, my mental health, it did take a bit of a dive, big time. I was in a marriage that I wasn't happy in. There was stuff going on there, and it wasn't until I made a decision, I found something out, and that was sort of a turning point, which triggered me on to, and I don't know if it was fueled through like anger or frustration with myself, but I was 9.5 stone heavier than I am now. So it drove a massive weight loss journey. And with my physical transformation, I then discovered all this, mindset stuff and personal development. So physically I changed, and I really got into this mental health stuff because, like I said, my mind did take a dive big time. So it's during this process that I've now do what I do. and want to help as many people as well as possible who also find themselves a bit stuck in a situation they might not want to be in.
I love that.
Yeah.
And where are you? Because you both of you actually helped me. It's even in some of the internal language that I use around mental fitness, right? So you look at it as like you would do physical fitness, and it just spins it slightly. Where are you on? Because hearing you talk about that, then both personally and also for people that I've worked with or friends, I've said to them, and this might be wrong, but I've said to them sometimes, you know, when people are angry and they feel they've suffered an injustice and they're just angry at themselves, angry at everything, that is actually a powerful fuel.
Yes.
If it doesn't become all consuming, but you can say, well, do it then, use that anger. Yeah.
And that is something I've discovered after I suddenly thought back, what drove me to lose 9.5 stone? And it was, I was angry. Oh, the dog's barking. The dog's joining in. He's angry as well at someone driving past. It was anger. And we've spoken about that to people. If you can channel that anger into something that's gonna take you forward rather than keep you stuck, is it a bad thing? I'm not sure. Yeah.
I think there's something we spoke about before. I tried to explain it. It's probably a bit of a weird, convoluted way, but it's like we've all got this power that we all possess, and we all use it, but we kind of use it against ourselves, right? And then when someone comes along and says, "Do you know what? You know that power you've got, you could use it again. You could use it for yourself." You know, we go, "Oh no, not at all." Like, what power?
I'll never be able to do.
Yeah, what power are you talking about? So it's like this: we've got this thing, but we don't know we can use it for ourselves. Yet we're using it against ourselves every single day. And then, so when you figure that out, it's like the way we speak, the way you think. If you can take a look at that, and then look at how you deal with situations. If you want to feel differently, it's just like changing that to then do it for long enough to feel better. Because obviously the thing I mentioned to you just when we were off camera, that situation, that could send me into a certain way of thinking and being. But by working on this mental fitness, it's enabled me to not go to that place, to be able to try to see it from someone else's point of view, to not react in an angry and aggressive way, to then be able to focus on the solution, which is over here, rather than on the problem. So being mentally fit, as we say, and practicing that just like you would physically, it gives you the opportunity and the options to deal with look for solutions rather than keep focusing on the problem, you know.
Naomi, do you think, especially for things like weight loss or going on kind of starting a progressive journey for yourself, whether that is physical, mental, a combination of the both, is the hardest part for people that you found just getting started?
Yeah, definitely. We always say change can happen in an instant, can't it? It's the build up to change is what takes the time. And I always, because I do work with women as well, and a lot of times weight loss comes up and they have done numerous diets. They've lost weight, the yo-yo diet, which was me, that was me. And I find sometimes that because they've done that so often, there is this belief that they'll fail. Oh, well, why would this one be any different from the last? Yeah, I lost a bit of weight before, but then I've put it all back on again. And there's this yo-yo. So I find that it's this instilling sort of this belief. It's this, so to change, you've got to believe that you can. And this is what we always say. We believe that people can do this. We have that belief that anyone can change anything if they want to. So to work with people, we have that in them, and it's instilling that into them as well. Especially
it's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, very.
Especially that thinking about, oh, I'm just going to put the weight back on, so what's the point in starting? And looking at failure in that sense differently to you would do in life. Otherwise, we'd never do anything. You'd never drive a car.
Exactly.
You'd never do anything, would you, if you were just thinking, well, I failed in the past, so I'm not going to do it again.
We say to the children, because the children are a lovely example kind of some adults as well, that they're scared to try stuff. They're scared to try anything new because of this fear of failure. So I said to them, we said to them the other day, didn't we? Listen, if you go into something new, first time, knowing that you're going to suck at it, right? You're going to, because you've never done it before, you're going to be all right when you do suck at it. And then you're going to try it again, and it's going to get a little bit easier each and every time. We always say about riding a bike, you didn't just get on a bike and ride it. You got on a bike and you fell off, and then you got back on it and you fell off again because you sucked at it the first time. But over time and practice, you eventually ride your bike.
And often we give the example of learning to walk for most of us.
True,
when we didn't know what we were doing, but we went through the same
Mm-hmm.
process, didn't we? We tried, we stumbled, we fell, we cried, we got back up, tried again, fell again, and eventually we mastered it, right? So
we've all got the blueprint for success.
And there was something else you'd mentioned before, I just wanted to
talk
about when we talk about motivation for diets and working out. Actually, action comes first and motivation follows, because if you wait for motivation, you're going to be waiting for all your life. So it's actually, once you take action, you feel better, you get a little bit of a result, which creates more momentum. Whereas lots of people are going, I'm not motivated to do it, but actually you've got to, I'll take action when I'm motivated, when actually it's the other way around. You've got to take the action when you're not motivated to create that momentum.
I think action beats the other great detractor, which is procrastination. It's kind of like, well, I think I can fit the gym in Tuesday night.
I find a lot of times with diet and exercise and weight loss and everything, there's so many negative things attached to it. So if I say the word diet to people, and they're like, they throw words back like, oh, it's boring, it's restrictive, it's hard, I'm hungry all the time. And we always say, well, your diet is just the food that you eat on a daily basis. And whatever you eat on a daily basis is going to get you a result. And if it's a result that you don't really like, change up what you're eating, but change up also how you feel about what you're doing. What is losing weight going to do for you? So people say, oh, I want to lose weight. And I'm like, okay, cool. So when you've lost a pound, you'll be happy then. And they're like, no, what do you mean? And I'm like, well, you've lost some weight. So then I go and say, but what does weight loss mean for you? So what are you going to gain from losing weight? You're going to gain energy. You're going to be more comfortable. You're going to buy clothes that you want. It's just looking that one step past weight loss or exercise or
the weight loss is the not having that thought in the morning of either what to wear or how you feel about yourself when you look at yourself. Because I often think about that as well. If you take care of that, it's one less thing to worry about or to play on your mind, or you just get to a point where you're really all right with it, and then it doesn't matter how you are, right? That's the other thing as well, trying to help people get to this point where, not that you don't care, we just say the difference. When people say they don't care, you know they're lying, don't you? How many times you've heard, I don't care, like you know they do, but we often say, I don't mind.
Don't mind.
It's slightly different, because actually I don't mind what people think. I still care about people and what some people think, but I don't mind what they say or think, because everybody's allowed to think themselves. And this is the other thing with the mental fitness, we want to help people get to that point where they don't mind, because they're happy within themselves. Therefore, lots of the other things that used to be a problem are no longer a problem.
I think that's a lovely way of looking at it, and it does. I do, because I think I've said the same stuff to people before, in that saying that I don't care isn't a negative. It's not apathy. It's not the absence of a feeling. It's just recognition that, and this has been taught through experience of some awful situations, but it's recognition that those things that they're talking about just don't bother me. I'm not bothered. They're not impacting me in the same way that maybe they're impacting them, or would have impacted a younger version of me. It's more just that, and that's, I think, when you look at when you're kind of mentoring or you're helping young people, or people engage about the podcast actually who are younger, I think that's what I love, is that there's people who you want to try and benefit and help them get to that point quicker. You know, I'm at this point now. I wish I'd have got there quicker.
Definitely. 100%.
When you think back, I think back to my 20s. Oh gosh, I'm so bothered by what people thought of me, and I became very much a yes person. So, God, if you say no to somebody, they won't like you, and then what does that mean? So you end up taking loads of stuff on, stressing yourself out to keep other people happy, and actually that's an achievable limit.
It's like this massive paradox, isn't it? That you a lot of time people figure that out when they haven't got much life left, or something happens, there's an illness or an incident, and then they understand kind of how they want to live their lives. And when actually, like you just said, if we could get people to, if you could learn that sort of stuff in your 20s, imagine what kind of life you'd live if you lived to be in your 80s, 90s, of not caring what people thought and understanding that actually it's not important, because we spend, like you said, so much time, maybe over half our lives, dependent on how long we live, to figure that out. And actually, some people never learn it, right? Some elderly people who still are bothered by what everybody says and have all got all these worries and concerns. And it's like, while you're doing that, you can't focus on living,
put yourself
because you're too bothered about what's gone before or what's going to come up.
I think it's, for me, it's like recognizing and actually engaging and interrogating my emotions. So I think, like you said then, Naomi, in your 20s, I was like a pinball in an emotional pinball, just bouncing around from one extreme to the other. And fear played a big part, from a work point of view, just kind of doing things based out of fear, like fear that I was going to lose my job. Whereas now, I'd say, okay, well, let's come into the room, sit down. Let's have a chat about why I'm so driven by you. What am I scared of? I'm scared that I'll let my family down. I'm scared that we'll lose the house. Wait a minute, you're catastrophizing. Are you saying that you won't get a job? And just having a conversation with that emotion.
Well, we always say all emotions are they're a message, they're telling you something. So it's about, instead of running from them, because we all welcome in the happy ones, don't we? Oh, I'm excited, I'm happy, this is fun, this is great. Yet when we're sad, angry, scared, hurt, we ignore them, we bury them and we run. But why? They're trying to tell us something all the time. That's lovely. You say you sit with them and ask them. The question we always say to clients is, when something's hit your stuff, we saw, when you feel that come in, we just say, sit with it and ask, how is this a problem for me? How is it a problem for me? And answer it. And then when you've got that answer, ask it again. Okay, so how is that now a problem for me? And it just gets it. And then you're like, right, there it is. There's the actual problem, not the one up here that we think it is.
And the bit what you just said, mate, about the pinball, that's brilliant, because actually it's not even for people in the 20s. When I think of lots of people today, that's exactly what they're like. They're still like that pinball machine. There's reactions to this, reactions to that. There's, and then it goes through the goal, and then there's the anger explosion. And it's like, and that's what we want to do on our course that we do with people. Is to stop the chaos of the pinball machine. It's to be able to take that moment to calm down, to simply be in control, or at least feel like you're in control of the game, right? And so you're going to get bashed from pillar to post still, but how you do it and how you react is very different to how you used to.
We still get, we still experience all of these emotions. We're not sitting here saying, oh, life's calm all the time. Stuff still comes up. It's in that. It's in the time, isn't it? The time. How long are you going to let this now have an impact on you?
This last three years for us, like both individually and collectively, we've got all sorts of things, mate, have come to our
We've
world.
Got relationship breakdowns.
There's all kind of stuff going on.
Coming up,
It's like throughout that, and I said it to Nay this morning, like I said to her, the amount of things that she's experienced over these last few years and challenges, how she's dealt with them has been incredible. Like, just no one's got a clue either about how well she deals with them and how she deals with them to maintain a level that then means that other people are okay, because she can be okay. But I just know that without the training that she's done herself and the work, it'd be a very, very different story. And that's what we want to give to people, is this ability to be able to deal with the crap situations that come into our lives and the challenges and the difficulties, the losing people, the job change, whatever your mental health, losing your physical health, and give them some sort of toolkit and way of thinking that enables them to just take that each event on its merits without, like you said, catastrophizing and blowing it all up, and then coming back to this, what can I do about this? Well, I can do this, and this. I can't do anything about that. So actually, I'm just going to let that go. I'm just going to put it down, because actually that's what we all do. We hold on to all that stuff. I said, we're all dragging this big boulder behind us, aren't we? All the stuff we've collected, like we said, the rucksack and all the things, and it's weighing everybody down, and it's helping people identify what they need for this journey and what they don't need. What
can they control? What can you do? When something happens and you're in that state of, oh my God, this is a catastrophe, it sometimes is hard to see the solutions, but they are always there. And it's the mental fitness is about training the mind to be confident. Resilient is another one.
Trust yourself,
and that you can handle this. You can.
Well, you always talk about that if someone gives you a present, so I'll let you tell it.
Yeah, I always say, so someone comes at you angry and things like that. And I always say, so if someone was to come to you with a present and you didn't take it off them, where does the present stay? And it's always with that person. And it's the same with any sort of anything anyone brings at you. If they bring harsh words to you, they can keep them, leave it with them. You don't have to take it on. You've got a choice always as to what you decide to take on. And we always say the problem's only a problem if you think it's a problem. Situations and circumstances always happen in life. And it's only until we apply our own meaning to it, from our own perspective, from our own experiences, that it becomes either a problem or not a problem.
Well, I think I put something on yesterday saying events don't upset you. Your beliefs
beliefs about it.
It's only your beliefs and your values around the event that cause you a problem, because every event is not a problem for everybody. So
traffic is the really basic example that we always use. Traffic's only a problem if you apply the meaning that it's in a problem, if you've got to get somewhere. So it's still just traffic. It's only the deeper meaning.
Do you know what? I've got a lovely example of that.
Go on.
So I went to work in Istanbul for a couple of years, and when I first went out there, Istanbul's just like a mental city. It's enormous, and the people are great. I think I should have been born in Turkey, because they are more kind of, this is mass generalization, but kind of emotions were present at work.
Okay.
So people were more demonstrative and things like that. Anyway, we had a meeting with another company, and it was in the other side of Istanbul, and we got a taxi, me and 3 colleagues of mine, all Turkish, and it was quite early on when I was there, and I hate being late, and we were just stuck in traffic. In fact, I ended up driving in Istanbul about a year or so later, and if you follow the rules, you're going to die. So you just have to go, but we were stuck, and in the end we were about 2 hours late, and I was losing my mind, and the guys and girls in the taxi with me were absolutely not bothered, and it was just kind of because it was what they were used to this. When we got to the other end, the people we were there to meet, equally not bothered, and I was kind of like, right, come on, hurry up, and they were like, no, here's some tea, coffee, we're going to talk about families. And even just something like that now, and this is some 5, 6, 7 years ago that I came back, even now traffic doesn't bother me, because, and I spoke to someone about it the other day saying, if you think about the number of times we say how bad the traffic is, it's like we're expecting it to be perfect. When in fact that's the norm. The norm is you're going to hit traffic, that there's going to be roadworks. There's never going to be a time where there aren't roadworks in the town that I live in. That somewhere, and to think that there is, you're on a hide into nothing. Why don't you just chill out? Don't think about the music you're listening to, think about a podcast you're listening to, whatever, rather than getting annoyed about, it's like getting annoyed about air.
I love it.
Well, like you said as well, can you use the time to listen to a podcast, a book, call someone that you've maybe known? So the time, I think that's what it is as well, isn't it? One, we're late, so what will people think about us? And
that's the fear. That's the fear. What are people going to think?
And then the other thing is, oh, I'm wasting time. We're wasting time in this car. We're not doing anything. We're not going anywhere. When actually, what if you could change that now to use it to do something more productive? Actually, it works really well.
I love your one. If you're ever late somewhere, never apologize for being late. Thank the people for waiting for you. Nice. So it's like, don't ever go in and like, sorry, I'm late. Just say, oh gosh, thank you so much for waiting. And it puts
because then they're like,
oh, no
even
worries.
if someone's annoyed waiting for you because you're late, you've said thank you, right?
Thank you,
so
thank you.
It's hard to get mad with people who say thank you.
Exactly. I've never been annoyed seeing Martin coming in a room late. He's like, I think everyone would just be pleased he's come in. He lights up a room, doesn't he? So when it comes to mental fitness and the work that you do, who do you help? What is it? Couples, individuals, companies?
Well, gosh, I think now when we do, because it's opened itself up into a really broad kind of spectrum, we can what we use and work with works for individuals, couples, but also for companies, because it works with individuals, it's going to work for couples and it'll work for organizations as well. And so the premise is very much around, like we spoke about before, about the physical elements of, when we say physical health, you're automatically, most people think of going for a run, going to the gym, eating healthy, drinking water, looking after yourself. When we say mental health, our first port of call is to depression, anxiety, suicide, the problems. So when we think physically, we go solutions. When we go mental, we go problems. And then what we've said is that physically you can be ill, you can be injured, or you can be unfit. And our question is, why isn't it the same when it comes to our mental health? You can be mentally ill, you can have had a trauma, so you've got an injury, but you can also be unfit. And that's not to be said to someone to be rude or derogatory. It's saying that ability to deal with all the things that we've just said, you've not developed it yet because you've not worked with someone to practice. Just like going out for a run to get fitter or lifting weights, you'll go work with a PT. Someone will show you the ropes, and then you get stronger and fitter once you know how to, the techniques, if that makes sense. So that's the way we look at this. And so while there's been this massive separation between physicality and mentality, people are saying, well, you can see an injury, can't you, on someone physically? But actually, it's that separation that's causing a big problem when it comes to mental health, because we're not taking lessons from how we deal with physical ailments and applying them to psychological and emotional ones, right? Because if you had I always think about football, back operations and things. I had to go for a scan, found the problem, go to see the specialist, have an operation, then work with a physio. I've got a rehab program, and you have to go through that rehab program to get yourself back to the level to be able to play pro sport again. Well, can we not do that with our mental health? Can we not have an injury? Can we not work on the injury? Can we not then have a rehab program to get us back to full fitness up there? And then the other thing is,
so insightful.
If we're really fit, who is it?
It's myself. Go on. There you go, buddy. It's just so insightful, because I did what you did when you said at the start, when people think of physical health, what do you think of? When you think of mental health, what do you think of? And for everyone listening, I know you're doing the same thing. It's amazing.
We've asked people, and it's always the same. Health in physical means something, and then the word mental health means the opposite.
And so by that very definition of how we already subconsciously think about each section, therein I find lies some of the issues then when we're coming to deal with mental health, is that the first look and everybody's first thought is problem, not solution. Right. And then the other thing, someone who I'd spoke to really insightfully said, but if you look at what's being drip fed to us through media channels and things over the last few years, actually has got people believing a certain way about themselves. Therefore, there's no chance of change, because if your beliefs are like hardwired, you can change them, but if your beliefs are that strong that you're broken, that you're ill, that you're never going to get fit, you're never going to be able to recover, what's going to happen? You're not going to be able to recover, because the belief, and that's when we said about that power that you've got, is telling you that there's no chance for recovery. Now, I know that's not true, because I've been there and come back from obviously the things we talked about before, where I was thinking suicidal thoughts and things. I've been able to come back from that to where I am now, which is very, very different. So I know it's possible. So when we say we believe in people that they can change things, if I've done it and other people have done it, I believe that everybody's got that capability, because they do. It's just that they've been told a certain story for long enough, you start to believe it. And that's what
I think it's so insightful to hear you talk like that. It's definitely had an immediate impact on me. It's really interesting as well, isn't it? Because there's still, if you applied the same, like you said about doing rehab and stuff like that, if you applied how other people view that and talk about it as well. So I'll give you an example. We have I've put together a large football team here, and people bring other people along that they said, oh, you should come along to this thing we do on a Sunday. And someone said, in a kind of a slightly negative way about somebody else, saying, oh, this guy's coming along, he did have depression a while ago, right? And they kind of lowered their voice and spoke a little bit like that. And I remember I said, has he ever broken a bone in the past? You wouldn't go, listen, he's a lovely guy, he did break his arm a few years ago. So but we have this weird sort of listen, a bit depressed a few years ago. Why are you telling me that? You know, I'll meet him as he comes, as he is.
Meet him as he is on that side.
Do you know what? That actually is what you've said there. We've talked about this as well. When we're all living our lives, what we do with people, we do it with kids, and we do it with older people, certainly. We put our thought processes, what we think they will do or should do, onto them. It's like I always think of elderly people. People go, oh, they're always like moody or in a bad mood, and I'm like, yeah, probably because you're probably treating them like a baby, and they're older than you, seen more life than you. Yeah, it's like in the families, we look at old people and we go, oh, they won't be able to do that, and well, do you want some help across the road? And it's like our thought processes, they're fighting like this idea that all these people in the family have about them, to maintain their own level of independence and kind of self-respect. And people aren't doing it because they don't care, they're doing it because they think they do care, but actually you're doing them a disservice. And we do it because no, they won't be able to do that. Well, how do you know? It's like what we've noticed now with people is we don't give people the opportunity to do stuff. We already decide that they can't do stuff, or that they're not going to be able to, or that we can do it better. So we won't let them
they won't
try.
do it our way.
They won't do it our way as well as us. So actually, when it comes to even like with the mental health stuff, can we give people the opportunity to try, rather than just ruling them out straight away, saying, they won't be able to handle that.
It's like that, like
it's
the example you just used.
Shall I tell you what? If we put a few things in place and we give them the opportunity to try, but be there to help catch them if they did fall. How good
with no
would that
judgment,
be?
with
no
all
judgment,
the support there.
You know? So I think that's the thing as well. Again, when we talked about those first thoughts of physical and mental health, how are we all thinking about people, like you just said, with mental illnesses, mental injuries? We're already putting our thoughts onto them. That actually, are those keeping them down as well?
It's so powerful. It's kind of like, again, with older generations, I think we fall into like lazy thinking, and you'll often hear, especially kids will go, they're surprised that either their grandparents or whoever, or elderly relatives, they're surprised that they had lives. They're like, you never guess what.
I think my youngest said to me, she said, Mummy, were you a child once? I was like, yes, darling, I have had like this life. I have grown up into this. I wasn't just your mother right from my own birth.
But you do think that, don't you? When your mum and dad, you don't ever think of them as a kid, because you've only known
them
a
teenager in their 20s,
right? So that's how you see them.
And also making mistakes, and it's kind of like you don't hit a certain age and go, right, that's it, I don't make any more mistakes now.
No, we constantly feed that back to our kids, because we've got 4 girls between us now, which is a lot of fun, Mark, I'm going to tell you. Yeah, I've got a really great decade also coming up. I'm looking forward to this.
We've talked about this before. I'm in a household with when my daughter's staying with us, I've got 2 stepdaughters. Yeah, there's 3, 13, 15 and soon to be 16 in the house. So
nice. That sounds like fun.
It genuinely is. It is a lot of fun.
No, it is.
Yeah.
We have a good laugh, don't we? But yeah, it's certainly different. So we went up to see my young nephews the other day, and just boys and girls.
There's 4 boys up there. We arrived with 4 girls. It's funny.
Carnage.
Yeah.
What do you always say about children? Because often, sometimes the way they act, and you're just like, what are you doing?
So I always say, if you've got a group of kids there and they're all just, messing around and just being generally like, what are you doing?
Wild.
Look at them as if you're on a night out, right? And you're the designated driver. And they're all your drunk mates, right? They're all just your drunk little mates. And then you're like, right, there it is.
It makes a lot of sense, right?
You're the designated driver and everyone's drunk around you. And suddenly it all becomes
a lovely way.
Yeah.
It's a lovely way of looking at it. I coach the under 13 girls team here. And I often think that at training, they're there to train, and then sometimes you're talking to them about a training exercise and you're looking at them and it is like they're just charging around. What's happening?
You're the designated driver and they're all your drunk mates. It's fine.
And how do you two kind of do you work together like every day, or
it depends? Like sometimes if we go off and do workshops or whatever, so the other week I was doing a workshop up north, so I went and did that on my own. So it just depends. Like we like to work together, and sometimes what we do as well, I'll work with groups of men. Naomi will work with groups of women, and we work with groups together. But this is the other thing when it comes to the work we do. When you work with a group of men, the conversation will be slightly different. And actually, being in a group of men, I've found the men feel like they've got this opportunity to talk in a slightly different way and to share little different things that maybe they wouldn't share if a woman was there, and vice versa. In terms of pressure within relationships, that men feel that sometimes the men feel like they can't complain or say that's what's bothering them, because often it'll either be dismissed, or it has been in the past, or it's kind of, well, it's not that bad for you because it's work. So there's like in relationships, often there's this competition about who's got it worse, right? That in itself causes a conflict. If someone feels like they can't say how they're feeling because the partner's going to go, well, it's not
just totaling up how many jobs I've already done today. Ready for the battle.
We talked about it the other time, didn't we? Boy jobs and girl jobs. Like we have a joke about it.
So earlier he was washing up and I was getting the bins in. I was like, I'm doing a boy job.
But often even that within households can become a problem because, well, you haven't done your job. She hadn't done a job, has she? She's not.
And I was doing this, and
I'm doing that, and then you're scoring points, and before you know it, you're in this unspoken battle.
You're in this competition mode instead of cooperation.
And so for most, if you look at work environments, home environments, if you're in competition often, it doesn't always bring out the best in people. We ask couples, don't we, and anybody actually in relationships, even at work I suppose as well, is the how do you feel when people say what should each bring to a relationship percentage wise? I don't know.
Well, you'd say 50-50.
50-50, and that's the answer we get, and we say what if, and feel free to reject this always. We always love this little debate. What if you bought 100% and expected 0% back? What if everybody operated on the 100-0 sort of principle? What would happen then if you always bought 100% of your game to any relationship that you're in, whether that's with family, friends, kids, whatever, and expected nothing sort of back? How would it be? I don't know. And
if everyone operated at that level, because then you've got 100% all the time.
Because if you're only bringing 50%, what's happened to the rest of you? Where's the other 50% of you?
And that's where the 50,
it's an interesting debate. Some people love it and others totally are like,
that's where the 50-50 then is the looking when someone's like walked past the stuff on the stairs or left the cup in the
well, that's not my job.
sink. But if
That's
you're at
not my
100,
job,
if both people are 100, the stuff either doesn't get left on the stairs and the cup gets washed up, or if it does, it's all right because the other person never expected you to do it anyway.
I love that concept of the 100-0 because it reminds me of like the selfless leader.
Yeah.
So you're there, you get better results. It's a better environment if it's kind of like servant leadership. It's kind of how can you help? What can you do? But this is such an interesting topic because I think anyone listening that's in a relationship can relate to this kind of point scoring of I've done this many jobs, I'm ahead, and then you become indignant about it. It's like kind of it's not fair, it's not right. It's fascinating because we've spoken about this, Martin, haven't we? Just this kind of like I've done X, Y, and Z already today. You know.
Oh, I'm always joking when I always shout, "There's only me working" when I'm washing up or doing stuff like that.
If the rest of us happen to just be sat down, you're like, "Only me working, guys. Only me working." Everybody just eye rolls, you know.
Yeah, they just ignore me and let me carry on.
Quietly. Work quietly.
But I don't. It's just
a rerun of the same show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it is that, and so those are the underlying tones for most of us in our relationships. Is that this is how we operate in nearly all of them, right? Yeah. We're always looking for something.
It's how I was
back
in
for
my
doing it. It's like when I hear people say sometimes, and after all the things I've done for you, and I'm like, well, did you really want to do them? For that, for giving's sake, or were you doing them because you wanted and expected something in return? Because for me, it's like, why do you need to say it after all I've done for you? It's like I just did it because I cared about you and loved you, right? And then the other thing we often talk about is unconditional love is being carried around in a bag full of conditions.
Yes.
So, you know, I'll love you and like you if you do what I expect you to and think you should do to keep me happy. Because that's one of the other things, isn't it? We rely on other people to keep us happy. And it's an impossible job. We can't. It's impossible to keep someone else happy. It's impossible. You can try it because you do it, you know, and because you can't live up to that standard, it's never going to work, right?
And this is where the mental fitness comes in again. If you can train yourself to be okay and to be happy, it has then a knock-on impact to the people around you, because you're not then grumpy if someone has done something or hasn't done something, and your mood then doesn't drop, because our energy, I love the energy stuff, I love it. Your energy has an impact on the people. We all know certain people, like no one will name anybody, but that people walk into the room and you're like, oh god, they like suck the life out of the room sometimes. Like, you know, you've left a conversation with them and
energy vampires,
tired. I think but you also know the people that they don't have to say a word and they come into a room and you feel like, oh, you're instantly sort of drawn. So it's about if we can, and I used to be that energy vampire, I used to be that person, and now it's about, can you maintain a level for yourself to then have an impact on other people to then sort of help them as well, I guess.
As well with the fitness stuff, it's like the ability then to be able to have those conversations where you can voice your opinion, but you'll voice it in a way and the other person won't get offended or will take it in a certain way. So even if there is a kind of discussion or a disagreement, you can still find a way to then come to a conclusion that even if you're not both satisfied fully with it, it doesn't then carry over to the next day. And then it's like that, being able to put it down. And even if you disagree, okay, we're not going to fine, but that doesn't mean it has to go forward into tomorrow and then the next day and where we're holding grudges, right?
It always comes back to you.
Even that ability to get fitter mentally means you won't hold a grudge. You know, I heard someone say once, there are no justified resentments. And when I first heard that, I was like, no, I'm not having that. What do you mean there's no justice? And it's difficult. Exactly. And it's hard. But actually, the more I've practiced it, it's enabled me to put things down much quicker, much easier. Therefore, I'm happier. Because now I'm not like, why am I holding that grudge against that? Like, I'm doing this because you did that. Well, it's like that tit for tat, innit? And then everybody's annoyed and angry. So actually,
well, it's that grudge, and it's like, what do you say? It's like drinking poison and expecting the other person to. It's only harming you. And I think that's why we are so passionate about this, because individuals, people are, and we were the same, walking around so sad, so stuck, and not knowing how to get out of this rut that you find yourself in sometimes. Thinking, and I remember I said, is this just how life is? Is this just how life is going to be? And I was 33 years old, and I thought, God, the age of 33, and I'm like, oh, is this how life is? And it's just giving people the opportunity to learn something different with the support, put it into practice, to at least, it kind of empowers them. It puts them back in. They're not relying on anybody else outside of themselves. They're not relying on waiting lists. They're not relying on support from that. They can actually start to do this themselves, which then I think that's really empowering. When you've done something, when you've achieved something for you and done it yourself, it feels good, doesn't it? It feels really
stop
good.
being the pinball. That's what it is, you know, because social media is a great example. How many people get enraged by things on social media, right? They absolutely, they're incensed, aren't they? And then they're overwhelmed with they want to give people, I'm going to give them a piece of my mind and give them my opinion. And it's like, when you realise that actually the world is no different before and after your opinion, you're probably a lot happier. And you also start to recognise what you would comment on or what you can actually just put down. Because often when you do want to say something, who's it for? It's only for you, so that you can
be right,
to make you right and make them wrong. And it's like you start to go, that's just a waste of time. Like it's just so what if I was right? It doesn't change anything. And if I'm wrong, it doesn't really change anything. So you save people time and energy as well, which they can then put into developing the relationships and having and being more present, and then loving the time that they're with people, rather than thinking what's the next thing, because while you're thinking that, you're never focused on like, we're just having this conversation now. If I'm thinking, oh, we've got this to do, that to do with this tomorrow, you're not there, are you? That's where people are at in life now, is we're never here. There's always the next. And again, the kids are a great example nowadays. They always want to know what we're doing next. Like what we've even only just started the thing we're doing. And we're trying to get and ask them to just concentrate on now, because you're missing life.
Again, it's trying to like not have, like, it took a divorce for me to and losing time with children. It took that for me to appreciate the importance of being present, like fully, like 100% engaged, no distraction. I'm there for you in whatever form that looks like, because we're going to maximize this moment right now. And you know, I think if someone had gone back and spoken to me that in my first marriage and said, this is what's, you know, you're not really, you think you're a good dad, you can be better, you know, you could be better. I'd be like, no, I can't. I'm brilliant. And it's even for me. I noticed it in small things. It's kind of my propensity to say yes to a request to do something. If it was on a graph, it would have been what would have been when I was at my lowest. After that point, I started saying yes. Like, so if one of the kids said, "Oh, Dad, can we just do this?" What I would have been like previously is, in a minute, let me just do whatever it was. You know, it'd probably like a housework or a work thing. Now it's the default is the other way around. It'd be like, because and once you do it, you know. So even if that first thought goes, oh, I don't want to do that, I don't want to do this. Now I know if I say yes, I'll probably enjoy it anyway. And that first thought about not enjoying it was wrong. But you know, it's kind of, again, it comes back to that thing about how do we help people. Well, what you're doing is great, because you're helping people get to that point without necessarily having something that sends them to the bottom of the barrel, you know.
Well, that's
we've spoken about that,
our own experiences brought this around. So and that's kind of in terms of the purposes. We don't want people to feel like we felt and get to that. I don't want people on the precipice of life to then go, oh, I need to make some changes. We want to help people look at what they're doing now, because people very often never look at stuff when they're just all right or going well. It's only when it goes completely wrong that we go, oh God, let's look at, and businesses do it, don't they? But what if we looked at how things are going now? Why are they going well, or why are they just all right, and where can they be better? Surely that would be better than sliding all the way down to the bottom.
So
and something climb back up.
And Naomi, something you said about relationships, I think it will just stick with me, is this cooperation, not competition. How can you move? How do you move from competition to cooperation? How do you help people do that?
Yeah.
First step is always acceptance and responsibility.
Yeah. So we always say, where is your relationship at right now? Where is it at? What part of you both played in getting it to this point?
Yeah. Not what's the other one
not
done.
What's you done. That's what we hear. Well,
right?
he's done this and we have it. We let because we coach couples together sometimes. We let them fire it out, and then we say, right, I'm going to ask the question again. What part of you played in getting to this point? So it's then about them acknowledging that this is what they've done. Now, a lot of people say that in a relationship, time passes, you have kids, stuff happens to that, and people hold on to how the relationship was when they first met. Oh, do you remember when we did this? And it's that, oh, how are we ever going to get back to that? Well, you're not. You've changed as people. You've had stuff happen.
It's like wanting to go back to the 90s, Mark. Yeah. You know, like the 90s were unbelievable, weren't they? If you could take all the music, the music's coming back. Football, everything was in the 90s. That decade was, for me.
Tottenham won a trophy in the 90s.
Do you know what I mean?
Two, in fact.
The music's so cool.
Your 9-year-old strolled through the other day singing Tina Turner.
What?
You're right there.
But people in relationships, they look at what it used to be like, and then that's where this comparison comes in.
And I always say you've got two lives running. I always think you've got this imaginary life that you wish you had, that life should be like that, and why are we not there, and why am I living like this? And then you've got your actual life, which if that's not going great, when you compare it to this imaginary life, of course your actual life is going to be dreadful, and then you start comparing it to this life that you should be having. So I always say, well, let's scrap that one. Let's look at where life is right now, and now how are we going to move towards this life that you would like to be living? But whilst we're busy comparing it to this imaginary life, we're going to stay stuck. We're going to feel dreadful. We're going to have thoughts of, I'm not good enough. This isn't good enough. Everything's dreadful.
While we're blaming
everyone else for it.
We've got to stop blaming and complaining. We've got to communicate with each other and be able to communicate it and receive it in a way that's going to help us move forward. Because often what happens, you did this, well, you did this, and then it just, you hear it all the time. And then we talk about how can we support each other in this? Because I think as well, sometimes in relationships, you are this individual within this kind of collective. So how can we support? What can I do to kind of, like you just said that, how can I help you, essentially? Because often you just start looking after yourself in relationships. I know I did in the past. You neglect, don't you? And you just focus on you and not how can I help? And then
once you understand yourself, it's now then developing that understanding for your partner. And when you've got two individuals working on themselves, you will form this very strong sort of relationship of understanding.
And I think then, we talk values about companies, but then as a couple, are your values aligned? And if not, let's see where we're at. And then after that, it's like, right, what's the goal now? What do we actually want to do as a couple? What do we want to do individually? And then what are the steps are we going to take towards reaching that imaginary, wonderful life we've got? What are the steps? And then once we know what we're going to do, how we're going to try to get there, how consistent are we going to be and committed to doing that? And we know we've got to do it for a long period of time. And in that time, we're both going to change as individuals. So then there's going to be the balancing act of who you were yesterday compared to who you are tomorrow. And then for us, it's like that gratitude.
What does that person do for you? What do you love about them? When you're focusing on what they're not doing all the time and the things that are irritating you, you're missing out on actually you are together. What is it that you do love about them? Why are you with them? What changing up the direction of where you're looking. Time is massive, I think. The concept of time, we don't know how long we've got. And I feel, and I did it, and I don't think you ever waste time as long as you look back and learn something from how you've been living to then change it up if you want to move forward differently. Because I think time is really important. And whilst we're sitting around being bothered about how we look on Instagram and what other people are thinking and stuff, we are missing out on living a life that we could be. you know, that's happy, and like you say, living in that moment. We time travel a lot in our minds, don't we? We'll time travel to the past, we'll time travel to the future, and actually we miss out on the here and now all the time. So that's how we kind of, with couples, work with them.
Well, you two are like my favourite couple. It hadn't been an awkward threesome at all.
Am I in the group? Am I in?
Yeah, you're in.
She's in.
You're in. I love you both. I think you're brilliant.
Oh, mate, as well. Sorry, we're going to start on the radio soon, so we want you to come up and come into the studio, because we want to obviously do this in reverse and have a chat with you about your life and things you've learned and bits. I can't believe they're letting us loose on the radio.
Neither can I. I mean,
oh my goodness,
it's going to be. I can't wait. It'll be brilliant. Yeah, I'd love to. When does your show start?
Next
Wednesday.
Next Wednesday we're on.
We had the training yesterday. I mean, I can't even use my own phone, let alone the dials on this radio. Oh man, oh gosh,
it's going to be interesting. We'll have a good time, like learning again. You know, you go, oh god, am I going to do this? But then, you know, a few weeks later on, like when you started this,
we fully accept we're going to suck at it the first time with this.
How exciting though!
I know.
Isn't it? It's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Well, you've made a real positive impact to my day already. For anyone listening, I 100% recommend connecting with Martin and Naomi on LinkedIn and just letting them into your life, because they make a real positive difference. So thank you both for coming on. And I look forward to coming on, and as long as I get to play Tribe Called Quest.
Oh,
absolutely.
You can choose your songs.
Yeah, you can pick your songs.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you both very much for coming on.
Oh, it's our pleasure, mate.
Thank you.